I'm Jodi Long, and you're listening to You Might Know Her From with Damien and Ann.
Welcome back to another episode of You Might Know Her From
with Damien and Ann.
I'm Damien.
I'm Ann. Hi, Damien. You look very contemplative today.
No, I had a really deep sleep.
Oh, nice.
Last night around 10 or so, I decided I was just like, I've been feeling a little achy. I've been feeling a little low. I've been feeling a little anxious. And so I decided to take an edible, which you gave me, just a low dosage one. And then I was like, I'm going to watch Mannequin 2.
We've been talking about it for so long.
Yeah, we've been talking about it for so long, and it was available for free to stream. So I watched it. And wow, I mean, you know, I do this thing. I know you know this, that sometimes I like do this thing that I, in my brain when I'm stoned, call time traveling, where I like watch something and I like have sense memories where I was like, I was 8 watching this and my grandparents. So I was like, wow, I remember watching Mannequin 2. And the thing that made me laugh about Mannequin 2 is that just like a week ago when we were trying to recap, like what were the differences between Mannequin and Mannequin 2 because of Kim Cattrall. Yeah. And I was like, well, Mannequin 2 is Christy Swanson and Jonathan Silverman, and Mannequin 1 is Kim Cattrall and Andrew McCarthy. Well, then I watched Mannequin 2 last night, and you know who it is? It's William Ragsdale. It's not Jonathan Silverman. It's William Ragsdale. And folks, you know who that is because he was he was the lead of Herman's Head, if you're familiar.
Oh, right.
He is like a Jonathan Silverman type, though, so of course it makes sense.
We have the same conversation every 2 years where I think it's Jonathan Silverman and then I say it is and then I forget that it's him and then I have to relearn that it's William Ragsdale, who was in Herman's Head, which also starred Yardley Smith, voice of
Lisa Simpson. And also stars Jane Sibbett, who was also on Friends and played Jessica Heck's wife on that show, and Jessica Heck with Jonathan Silverman on whatever that show's called. The Single Guy.
The Single Guy. I'm
pretty sure we've had this conversation on this show already, so
I was about to say, that was like Jonathan Silverman was an early thread of this podcast, and I do have fondness for him. I'm not exactly sure why, because I thought he was in Mannequin 2, a movie I watched repeatedly as a child, but apparently that's not the reason. He did, however, star in that TV movie that Carrie Fisher wrote, These Old Broads, which stars Joan Collins, Shirley MacLaine, Elizabeth Taylor,
Debbie Reynolds. Wait, Jonathan Silverman wrote that?
No. Carrie Fisher wrote it.
Right, okay.
And Jonathan Silverman, I think, plays like he is maybe... He's some like agenty kind of guy in the movie. And like I love him for that. And it makes me think that he was like a friend of the Fishers.
So I know somebody who worked with Jonathan Silverman once. And they said that he like walked into a scene that he was like, I need nachos. And he walked into the scene like eating nachos. And my friend who worked with him was like, that was so funny. And then they worked together again on another show. And he was like, I need nachos. And I was like, okay, like this is his thing. And I was like, well, I get it because like actors like want to like. I remember when Amy Brenneman was talking to us about like skinning the fish or like doing like.
Who told us? Was it Amy Brenneman that said, "Well, you know, Brad Pitt only eats on screen now that he's been doing that since 2010." I said, "Is that a thing that Brad Pitt has been known to do? Is like he couldn't act, and so now he's like, well, once I have food in my mouth, I know I can really deliver." I
think it was Amy because she was like, we were asking her about deveining the shrimp in Fear, and she was like, "Well, I loved like descaling a fish on stage," and she was like, you know, like, and I was like, "Well, it makes sense because you're like very present then because you're like focused."
It takes you out of your own head.
Exactly. Right. But I'm like sort of charmed. Now I like love Jonathan Silverman all over again 4 years later, now knowing that he always like wants nachos, so that he's like stuffing his face as he delivers a punchline as he like walks into a scene.
Oh, God bless him. All right. Add him to the list of men. Add him to the list of men. We're going to have to narrow it down. Somebody might have to get kicked off of the list of men. I just want to tell you that I have been trying to re-engage in the world in ways that feel like good to be in New York City. So I've seen some theater, which feels really nice. I saw Black No More off Broadway this past week. And though I felt like it was like a really ambitious show that was not perfect, it had some transcendent moments and some like horrific moments within it that were so bad. But you know I love that, the mix of high and low. But I have to say, one of the people, if you're in New York City or you're traveling to New York City, that I think everyone should drop everything to see, and that's Tamika Lawrence, who blew my ever-loving mind. And I actually didn't get to see her in Caroline or Change. She played Dottie. You saw her in Caroline or Change.
She was great.
And yeah, she is like a phenomenal talent. So I was like blown away by her. And then because case counts are down, my partner and I were like, I really want to go see movies. I'm like, I miss the movie theater. So I had these like old AMC passes from ages ago that were living in my wallet. And I was like, they're still good. Great. So went to go see Belfast in the theater yesterday. And I was really excited to see it. And I have to tell you that I hated it. I was so shocked because I thought it was going to be a movie for me.
Did you? It surprises me that you
it's got Judi Dench and Ciarán Hinds. There's like a woman in it that I didn't know. But here's the thing: I completely forgot that we had discussed
Jamie Dornan is in
because Jamie Dornan was the lead, and that's the reason why he was fucking going on a press tour singing "Everlasting Love" because he sings it in the movie in this black and white. The whole movie is painted in very broad strokes, which was my main problem with it. It's great to see Judi Dench on screen in anything. I have to say that Kenneth Branagh is not on my top 10 list of anything. He is on my top 10 shit list, and I don't know why I don't like Kenneth Branagh, but I don't. I'm putting it on the record here. No, I don't. I don't like him. I don't like his work, and I think he's a bad director. Also, the entire movie was scored with Van Morrison music. So I just have to say...
I love Van Morrison.
I'm not saying don't see it. I think he's a truther. He's a problem. But Judi Dench is worth it. But she's on screen for about 7 minutes, and I just feel like the movie was bad. However, it was great to be back in a movie theater. There was a woman coughing behind me, which was extremely anxiety-provoking. But I'm excited to try and see more movies because I feel like I'm really trying to catch up. It's been a while. And I find it harder to sit and watch movies in my home because my attention span is just not what it once was.
Yeah, it's impossible. It's nearly
I try
impossible.
to like put my phone in my bedroom while I watch something on the TV so that I'm not, but it doesn't work. Anyway, I love going to the movie theater. So if you've seen anything that we haven't mentioned here that you think is a must-see, please let us know. We always want to hear those recommendations. And if you liked Belfast, good for you. If you hate Kenneth Branagh, please let me know. I feel like, thank God, Emma Thompson divorced him. She's so much better off.
But they're so good in, what is that, Much Ado About Nothing? They're so good in that together. And then also, he directed Thor, and I was very into that because he like basically directed it like it was Shakespeare, and I was into that.
Never saw it. Wait, is that the one with Natalie Portman? Mm-hmm. I did see that. It was fine. Folks, if you're new to the show, this is what we do. We shoot the shit with each other. We talk about what we're seeing, what's happening in our lives, and we interview an actress each episode. This week is no different, of course. We were able to sit down with brilliant actress of stage and screen, one Miss Jodi Long. And we had, I think, one of the most like far-reaching, historically relevant, interesting conversations that we've had with an actor in a long time. And it was like a real thrill to talk to her. Also, because we discovered that she has this one-woman show that we get into in the interview, but that she is actually bringing to Bucks County Playhouse in Pennsylvania, which is very close to where Damien grew up. And it was slated for February, but because of the pandemic and Omicron, it actually got pushed to June. So her one-woman show, American Jade, is now opening the summer season for Bucks County Playhouse. So we're very excited to see her in that.
You might know her from Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings,
Dash and Lily,
All-American Girl,
The Hot Chick,
Soursweet,
Patti Hearst,
Sullivan Son,
and the 2002 Broadway revival of Flower Drum Song.
We are just so excited to be here with actress, Emmy winner, and recently elected president of SAG-AFTRA LA Local, Jodi Long. Jodi, thanks for being on You Might Know Her From with us.
Well, I'm so happy to be here. It's you might know her. It's like I'm so old.
No, that is not the premise of the show.
No, that's not it.
Okay,
Jodi, it's a really exciting time for us, for you, because we are now on the heels of your Marvel Cinematic Universe debut. You appear as Mrs. Chen, Katie, Awkwafina's mother in Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings.
yes.
And the thing that interests Anne and I the most about this project is that it employs great actresses like Michelle Yeoh, Sai Chin, and you. How much of this project did you know about when you signed up? And how much of it was shrouded in secrecy?
It's completely,
what can you share?
Completely shrouded in secrecy. I never got a script.
I can't handle that.
No, I never got a
too much.
script. And I got down to Australia, which is where we were shooting it. And I was like, okay, I have this one scene. I have no idea what's happening. And I met Nora on, that's Awkwafina, that's her real name. And I met her on set. And I said, so do you know what's happening? Because I haven't gotten a script. And she said, oh, yeah, well, they didn't give me a script either. I was like, but you read a script by now. And she said, yeah, we had to really fight for it. And you know how she talks. I was like, really? I mean, you're probably in the script a lot more than me. How can you agree to something you haven't read? She goes, yeah, that was a big problem for me. They actually finally gave her a script, I think, before she got on the plane.
That is wild. I mean, also, you're both Queens girls, too, right? I didn't even think about that.
We are. And I'll just tell you the little story about when I first met her. So I'm on the set, and Destin, he's on the set, and then she comes on, and he introduces me to her. And I look at her, and I go, so you're from Queens, huh? She looks at me, and she goes, yeah, you? I go, yeah, where? She goes, Forest Hills. I said, Woodside, Jackson Heights. But I grew up in Forest Hills, too. And she goes, where'd you go to high school? I said, Performing Arts High School. She goes, me too. And I said, for drama? And she goes, no, I played the tuba. And
that's cool.
Destin looks at both of us. He goes, well, you're family now. So it really was pretty amazing. And I think you don't see it as much as me because, all the drama schools that I've gone to. But, I'm really pretty much a street New Yorker. And we just got along really well. And I'll just give you another little fun thing. So I'm not to really toot my horn, but just to tell you this funny thing. I'm being honored by Pan Asian Rep in New York. And so they asked me, they said, well, who would you like to present to you? And I think they were hoping that I would say David Henry Wong because I've worked with him so many times. And I thought about it, and I called them the next day, and I said, I think I'd like Lucy Liu to present to me. And they're like, what? Do you know her? And I was like, yeah, I know her. She was my dresser at Manhattan Theater Club. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, for the Wash. That was years ago, 1,000 years ago. And they're like, oh, well, do you have her email? I was like, yeah. But a reason I'm telling you this story is she's also a Queens girl. And she lived about 7 blocks from my mom in Queens, in Jackson Heights, her family. So she knew my mom. And so when I asked her, and she was like, well, I don't know if the COVID is really bad with the Delta variants. But after a couple of days, she wrote me back and she said, I'd be so honored to present this award to you. So I just think, in my book, Queens girls, we fucking rock. Sorry, I'm not supposed to say that.
No, please do. We believe in Queens here. Queens is very important to both of us.
Oh, are you a Queens girl too?
I lived in Queens for 8 years, and it was like where I really felt like I made my first home by myself in New York City. And I live uptown now, but I have the best place in my heart for Queens. I love it.
Well, so much. All Queens girls have to get to the city. That's it's like you have to get on the train. You're like, I'm going there. That's where I'm going. Yeah. And so you did it. You made it to uptown.
Yeah. I love that so much for so many reasons. I mean, we love tried and true New Yorkers. And, as you said, you grew up in New York. You were the daughter of vaudevillians, which we are just frankly obsessed with. So for our listeners, your parents toured as a duo in the 40s and 50s, Trudy and Larry Leong.
Actually, it was Larry and Trudy Leong.
Sorry. Oh, he
Women's
asked for...
Lib had not happened yet. It was Larry and Trudy Leong.
I'm so sorry. We have a habit of putting women first here on this podcast, so I'm glad to know that he got top billing well.
Like Stiller and Mara, kind of the same thing.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So you made this incredible documentary about them in 2008. So your father was Australian Chinese. He was a singer and dancer, and your mother was a Japanese American showgirl. The movie is called Long Story Short, and it chronicles yours and your parents' life in showbiz and how Flower Drum Song actually sort of drew a direct line between you and your father 50 years apart.
Correct.
So in addition to all of the sort of joyous footage that exists in this documentary, which, by the way, we're going to link out to.
Oh, you watched it? Wow.
Yeah, I watched it.
You did your homework.
It was spectacular. And no spoilers, but, you sort of find the footage of them on Ed Sullivan. You're able to present it to your parents. It's really beautiful. So you cover all of this joyous ground, and there's this great footage of them performing throughout the years. But it also covers a lot of sort of really emotional territory, things like, your mother's time in the Japanese internment camp, your parents' parents' divorce, your father's health problems later in life. Can you talk about sort of this project for you as an artist and like how hard it was for you to convince your parents to participate with you in this documentary and sort of how it changed your relationship with them?
Well, this documentary started back in 2002 when I was doing Flower Drum Song at the Mark Taper, and it was a girlfriend of mine who just passed away, and oh my gosh, she said to me when I had gotten the job at Flower Drum Song, she said, Jodi, your father being in it and this is the family story. You need to do a documentary film about this. And I said, I'm not a filmmaker. If you think it's such a great idea, why don't you do it? That's exactly what I said to her, and she was a screenwriter. And she called me the next day, and she said, I thought about it. I'm going to do it. I was like, what? And so she started it. I called my parents, and I said, Sally, and they knew Sally, and I said, Sally would like to do a documentary on you and Flower Drum Song. And my father, being the old show guy that he was like, sure, fine. Didn't blink an eye. My mother was a little more like, what? I don't know if I really want to talk about this. I don't remember anything. And I think trauma, my mother always said she didn't remember anything. And the internment camps was really a trauma for her. It was a trauma of her life, which I found out later, right before she passed away, which was quite a few years ago. I would say, why don't you remember this? And she'd be like, I don't remember. So it was harder to get her to open up, not that she was against it. She agreed to it, but it was more difficult for her. And we got some stuff that, was good for her to tell. And she had told me some of these stories before we did the documentary, so I knew what was in her. And I just want to share this, and talking about trauma again. My mother one day at the kitchen table just happens to tell me the story, if when you see it, is the story on the train when she finally gets out of the internment camp. And she tells me this story and about what happens on the train, not to have a spoiler here, but it's interesting. And there's a soldier who's a captain in the army sitting next to her. And this MP comes and he's like going back and forth and back and forth. And she finally realizes he's doing it because of her. She's the only Japanese American person on the train going from Minidoka, Idaho to New York City, because that was the only place a Japanese American person could go without being assaulted or put in jail or all those things. That's why they said the internment camps were for their own good. But it was a terrible trauma for that generation. And not only their parents, who were much older, but my mother, who was a teenager. And she got out of the camps when she was 19. While her brother, before Pearl Harbor, was fighting Nazis in Europe, in France. So she told me the story, and I had never heard this story before at the kitchen table, and she started sobbing. She had never shared that story before. And I'm sobbing. The two of us are crying over the kitchen table after breakfast. And I knew I had to try and get somehow that story into the movie. And now I have a one-woman show that it's also in the show as well.
I can't recommend it highly enough. I thought it was really beautifully done, and you wrote the piece. And I mean, it's really very personal. It also is like there's a lot of light in it as well, and your parents' personalities really shine through, and they're both really like fantastic characters in their own right. So I'm really grateful to have seen it. I feel like that was news to us when we were delving into your career. So I'm really hopeful that you come back east and do your one-woman show, because I would love to see it.
I'm going to be doing it. We did it in New Jersey Rep. Actually, it was called Surfing DNA. It's still called Surfing DNA, but I'm thinking of changing the title, because most people say to me, so it's a science project? And, I started writing this a long time ago, probably almost 20 years ago now, before my parents died. And it really is about imprints. So the imprints that we're born with in our DNA, the emotional imprints that our parents imprint on us, and the ones that society has for us as women, people of color. Let's go down the list, right? That was always very interesting to me. that thing? And how do you, once you realize what the imprint is, if you ever do, right? You listen to yourself deeply enough, then how do you evolve and go beyond that? Especially if there's trauma involved. Yeah. I mean, I never thought of it in those terms, but as I've gotten older and have gone through it, and I see that I've had to come to terms with a lot of the imprints that were laid on me, and how they infected me, and how I acted out because of them, right?
Yeah.
That's why I called it Surfing DNA. But we are going to be doing it at Bucks County Playhouse.
In Pennsylvania?
I grew up not too far from there.
Oh, really?
My parents would take me to see shows there, and I love that theater. It's a great theater.
Yeah,
so
and
we might just have to make a trip.
I think you do. I'm so excited. We did it in Jersey in 2019, and I was planning to bring it into New York. And then, of course, I went into Dash and Lily, which I got the Emmy Award, and then I went into Shang-Chi, and then everything shut down. So it was like, dum-de-dum-de-dum. And I think it's so interesting because Bucks County just told me recently that my show is the first original play that they will have ever done at Bucks County Playhouse. These producers.
That's very cool.
They usually, and I think, wow, isn't that a very, very white area that they're doing my play?
That's exciting. I mean, honestly, they're very lucky to have you there.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, I'm lucky. These are wonderful producers, and I know that Robin Goodman and Alex Frazier. And I'm just so delighted they want to do the show. And we're just going to have fun. That's all I'm going to say. And hopefully...
I can't wait to see it.
While we're on the topic of your parents, though, and a little bit of a later note, may I ask, so your father was in Flower Drum Song on Broadway, and they obviously, your parents worked the nightclub circuit. We are huge fans of Pat Suzuki. Were they friendly with her? Do they know her?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, my dad worked with her for years. My dad replaced Jack Sue. The original lead in Flower Drum Song was Larry Blyden, who was not Asian. But he played the Asian lead.
Not Asian.
And then when he left the show, which he played Sammy Fong, Jack Sue, who played a secondary part, he moved up into the lead. And then they brought my father into Jack's part, right? And then my father had a big fight, which is also in my show, and it's in
the documentary,
short, and got fired. Had a big fight. Very Australian of him. I've had Australian theaters say to me, "Oh my God, your father is so Australian," because he would punch anybody out if they just even looked at him cross-eyed. What are you doing? Punch him out. So anyway. Yeah, so going back to Pat Suzuki.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you knew her. We've been long in pursuit of her. She's like, I'm in retirement, no. And we were like, please. And she said no.
Yeah, I love her.
She's incredible.
She's incredible. I love her. She was like my idol growing up. I think so much. Somebody just sent me a thing of me singing in Flower Drum Song. It's on my Instagram page. I reposted it. And I forgot what I had done, which was nice to see. But really, Pat was the first influence on me besides my parents as performers, because I used to watch her backstage when they were rehearsing in Flower Drum Song. And then I'd get in the front, and the mega wattage that she had, she took the stage and she grabbed you, and I was just stunned as a kid. I mean, I wanted to be her. So years later, when she came to the first workshop performance of Flower Drum Song, she sat there with my dad. And it was bad enough as my dad, who's super critical of me, but there's Pat Suzuki in the front row with him, and I was just like, oh my God, I think I'm just gonna have a heart attack, But she has been nothing but incredibly supportive of me throughout my career, and especially since Flower Drum Song, and I just love her dearly. And yes, she does say that she's retired. But I saw her a couple of years ago. It was a benefit. And she just still is the sassy self that she is. She had a New York Yankee hat on. And
I love it. So you made your Broadway debut at the age of 7 in the musical Nowhere to Go But Up with legends like Dorothy Loudon, Tom Bosley, Martin Balsam. It was directed by Sidney Lumet.
Correct.
Some of your other theater credits include, and I know this is just a short list, but Stephen Sondheim's play, Getting Away with Murder, The Bacchae, Loose Ends with Kevin Kline, Celia Weston, and Patricia Richardson. You were back off-Broadway in 2019 in Fern Hill, your solo show, Surfing DNA. You've worked with The Public and Lincoln Center and Manhattan Theater Club and the Goodman Theater. You went to SUNY Purchase to study acting. The question is, what was the show that you've done where you felt you'd had utilized every inch of that actor training you got at SUNY Purchase?
My own show. That's why I wrote it.
Yeah.
That's why I wrote it.
Yeah.
I was like, I want to play a Scottish woman with red hair. And they're going to have this Scottish accent coming out of me, and they're going to see my face.
Yeah.
That's a subversive. I'm a little subversive. So I don't get to do that often.
Also, the physicality of doing it all, like the solo show, is just like you get to put all of that body, Alexander technique, whatever your technique is, you get to use it all.
Yeah, link letter technique.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. And, and that's for an actor, that's the fun of it, that you get to use all of yourself. I mean, I was trained as a classical actress, and everyone said, my dean, as I was graduating, there's stick to modeling and commercials because there's no place for you in the American theater.
Very
Fuck
helpful.
Him. Or her, but probably him.
Flip them the bird. Yeah, well, it was his problem, not mine.
Yeah.
But that was when I first started, and I had to do that a lot. I mean, I'd go in for those equity open calls. They don't have them anymore, but they used to. And I'd show up for our town, and they'd go, so what are you here for? I'd say, Emily. And they'd go, oh, no, but we're not doing it like that. Like what?
It's a terrible industry. I mean, it is.
I mean, it's changing now, thank gosh. But then it was a lot harder. And you had to have a lot of gumption, which I did, and a lot of moxie, and I didn't take no for an answer. And somebody asked me recently, and I said, well, I just think I had to prove them wrong. Like, that's not the case. It's like unconscious bias, right? People they just have in their mind, oh, no. Only a young Caucasian girl could play that part. That's changed now. Hamilton was, that changed things. And at one point I was like, is anybody ever going to accept an Asian person playing George Washington? Right? Well, now my friend, Marcus Choi, is in the national tour of Hamilton playing George Washington.
Yeah.
That's progress. That's progress. But it needs younger minds and more open minds to do that.
Yeah. So I'm going to bring it back to the full circle moment of Flower Drum Song, which, you were Madame Liang in the 2002 Broadway revival. And this was a show that Ben Brantley called you out as the standout of the show in his New York Times review. Just wanted to say that. So David Henry Wong, he revised the libretto for the book and sort of reinvented your character. So you sort of were, I think they described her previously as like a wise owl kind of anti-character in the original, and it was reinvented as a sort of fast-talking club promoter.
Agent. She was an agent.
Agent. Sorry. Yes. Fast-talking agent. So they took away the song Chop Suey and made that sort of a group number. But, we were talking about how you had appeared in Flower Drum Song alongside your father. How did you feel about the adjustments to the show since you sort of grew up watching an original iteration of the show? What was that like for you?
Oh, it was hard at first because, I was so used to the old show and stuff. Although I was fine with not singing Chop Suey because that wasn't my favorite song of the show. And now I actually got to sing Grant Avenue, which was Pat Suzuki's song. So
one of the greatest numbers in the show.
For me, I'm just like, that's the thing. And then I got to sing Don't Marry Me, which is a song my dad sang as Sammy Fong. Now, Sammy Fong still sings that song in the show, but now his potential love interest was my character instead of Mei Lee. So it was so much fun to sing with my dad. And what didn't make long story short, my documentary, was Dad and I singing that song together.
Oh.
And we always thought that if we ever did one of those DVDs, like who watches DVDs anymore, but that would be sort of an add-on clip to
special
put in.
feature.
Yeah.
You said your dad was a harsh critic. Did he have commentary for you, or was he like, no, you're an adult now? No, he had things to say?
He was always telling me, you got to say that faster, it'll be funnier.
Oh my God.
I mean, we were talking like my dad's from like the Mickey Rooney kind of generation, right? They were always on,
Yeah.
Yes,
they're always
yes.
telling you a story. Got another theory story for you. And being an old vaudeville guy, he would be like, you missed the joke tonight because you didn't say it funny enough. You took a pause. Or you need to do a little soft shoe here. It was always the thing. Just a little soft shoe here. Da, da, da. You know, you really should be blah, 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 blah. I'm like, Dad. That's a different show.
Stay in your lane, Dad. Yeah.
But he, you know, in the end, I think he was really proud of me. And, you know, winning the Emmy. So the only problem I had with it was that my parents weren't alive to see it. To hear that I was nominated, because I think they would have just been through the roof.
Yeah.
So, Jodi, in the late 80s and early 90s, you appeared in small roles in big movies like Splash and Born on the 4th of July. But sandwiched between these blockbusters, you were doing really excellent work in independent films. You played real-life SLA member Wendy Yoshimura in Paul Schrader's 1988 film Patti Hearst. And that same year, you appeared in the British film Soursweet, directed by Mike Newell, about a couple in Hong Kong who moved to the UK with dreams of starting their own business. And one of the great joys of doing this podcast is like we love finding these performances. We loved finding these performances where you were really getting to like sink your teeth into something. What is one performance of yours that's on screen that you're really proud of, wish more people had seen, and that you would want like our listeners to go find and watch?
I loved Soursweet, but I also really, really loved Sullivan Son, which was the series I did with Steve Byrne.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was because we did 3 seasons of that, but the writers, Rob Long, who does Martini Shot, I don't know if you listen to his podcast, he's a very, very brilliant and funny man. He wrote stuff for me that I got to do my version of I Love Lucy. And I mean, how fun is that, right? Really,
Yeah.
people don't see me that way, so I got to do it.
Yeah, the physical comedy is very good.
Fun.
You gave us a great transition because we wanted to move on to talk about like you're sort of famous for and most recognizable maybe to some audiences as Margaret Cho's mother, Catherine Kim, on All American Girl. So you talk about playing like a Korean mother in All American Girl, and then also in Sullivan and Sons. Is there like a part of you that feels like you have that sort of sitcom bone in your body because of your vaudevillian parents? Because I feel like we know you as like classically trained, but then you also have this sort of like sitcom bone where not everybody can do it. Not everybody can do it well.
Well, I had never done a sitcom. Well, actually, what am I talking about? I did, you probably didn't see this one, but I did this
Valerie Bertinelli?
Cafe American.
Cafe American.
Yeah, we were like,
we don't know how to say
we can't figure out how to say it. I was like, Damien, how would you say it?
It's Cafe American. It's really Cafe Americain, right? It's French. So
Yes,
that was
yes.
my first sitcom. And, you know, I come from the theater, so I know how to play to an audience, which is what you play to when you're doing a sitcom, whether it's a 3 or 4 camera shoot. And that was a 4 camera shoot because we shot on film. And James Burrows directed it. So I got to work with the best.
Yeah.
And that was my first foray into it. And Jimmy, there was one thing in the original pilot about blowing chunks. And I didn't know what blowing chunks was, which is like throwing up, right? And and I was like, I don't know why this is funny. And I don't really understand it. So I said to him, and he turned to me and he goes, don't worry, they're going to rewrite it. Don't worry about it. Because obviously nobody else thought it was funny either. So, but I love Valerie too. But that was a fun character. I played like an Imelda Marcos character, right? I brought in a cigarette holder. I was always so full of myself. So that was really fun. And that's where I got my chops doing sitcoms. It's amazing. I got to work with such incredible people to learn from.
May I ask, you are from Queens, and then I've heard you talk about like you went to SUNY Purchase and learned to get rid of your Queens accent to be a professional actor. But then you've done like Korean accents, and you were doing like a Filipina accent a little bit in Cafe American, no?
No.
As the Imelda?
No, I didn't, because I didn't know how to do that. So they asked me for an accent. For the audition, they asked me for an accent, and my name was Madame Ibarra. I don't know what that is, right? I guess it's Spanish or Filipino, probably.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what it was. And I said, well, what kind of accent? A French accent? I asked them for a French. I said, do you want a French accent? And they're like, no, some kind of Asian accent. We don't care what it is. That's what they said. I mean, this is, 1991, 30 years ago. Holy crap.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I just thought, well, this woman's really full of herself. I'm going to use this cigarette holder, and she's got lots of shoes and great clothes. I'm going to use the basis. In comedy, it's always about, well, you guys know because you're comedians, that comedy is about the juxtaposition of opposites. So if here I'm this very elegant woman, I'm just going to have the basest, crassest Chinatown accent I can give them. That's really what it was. And that's what I did. And they thought it was funny.
Do you have a good ear? Like, are you just good at picking up accents, like dialects?
I think I've gotten better over the years. I mean, I don't think I would have said that 30 years ago, but yeah, I just sort of do it. And I'm not as good, I think, as like Meryl Streep is really good at it. I have to work. Maybe she has to work at it too. I don't know. And so then I went right into All American Girl. I mean, we got canceled, and then I got the pilot. I mean, I got an audition, and I grayed my hair out. And
you're that great gray stripe.
Yeah, that stupid
It's
gray
iconic.
stripe.
It's like Rogue from the X-Men.
And I wrapped towels around myself, and I went out and I bought a muumuu. This is what I did.
Well, you're also like barely older than Margaret Cho, and like Amy Hill is
also not old.
It's just like, it was comical.
It was a comedy.
Yeah.
So I did the do, and I couldn't believe, I went in and I read with Margaret, and she was sweating. And I was like, I don't know, you got the job. I don't know why you're sweating. But all the suits were out there. Oh, my God. And I got the job. I couldn't believe it. I was just like, okay.
I mean, that show was very high profile. It got a lot of press because Margaret was having sort of her moment. And, it got a lot of spotlight because it was the first all Asian American cast in prime time.
It wasn't the first. It was the second.
Well, there was Pat Morita's show, but it wasn't. His cast was not fully because one of the other leads was not Asian American.
Mr. T and Tina.
Mr. T and Tina, yeah.
That was Pat Suzuki and June Angela.
Pat Suzuki.
June Angela.
We looked everywhere for it, but I believe
Tina is maybe a white woman. I think Susan Blanchard.
I don't know. I saw it maybe once 1,000 years ago. I don't remember.
We've been looking for it for years. We've been trying to find the 5 episodes that exist. We can't find it.
Wow, only 5 episodes. That was a quick one.
It was quick. But I mean, All American Girl, to its credit. Okay, so if it wasn't wholly the first all Asian American cast, it was certainly the all Asian American cast centered around a woman.
Yeah. Yes.
Was there talk of sort of what that meant at the time, or was it only until later, when like 20 years, 30 years later, we're still talking about what a big deal that was?
No, it was a big deal. It was a big deal, to have that. And I saw that Margaret. I listened to Margaret Cho with you, and it was hard for her. It was a lot of pressure to be the one, right? And the studios and network was coming at her for her weight and for this and for that. And, and then they changed the show in the end. She moves out the last 3 episodes or 2 episodes. She moves out of her parents' house into a friends-like environment. Right. And I just think it was such a great idea, and if she had been maybe a little older, she could have taken the reins more. And so many people, so many cooks in the broth, and a man who created a sitcom about an immigrant Jewish family was the showrunner on our show. So he's trying to figure out what it is to be Asian and give me stories about that. And it was hard. It was really hard, but it was time. So it was 1992, 93 season. It's the time. They tried. And
right.
I mean, we debuted at the #1 show when there was only 3 or 4 networks, right?
Yeah, I watched it.
I was
watched
obsessed
the
with
first
it.
episode.
Yeah.
It was like we watched it as a family.
Same.
The cast was stacked. I mean, it was incredible. B.D. Wong, you, Amy Hill. I mean, it was an incredible cast.
Judy Gold.
Oh my God, that's right.
I don't remember
That's
Judy
right.
Gold being on it, honestly.
She was the real tall one.
Always.
Touché.
She always is. But yeah, it's a shame they couldn't figure it out, that they couldn't make it work.
But I think that, still, so then you go to cut to Sullivan Son. That's the next family Asian. I mean, we're half Asian, right? So it's Dan Lauria and myself and Steve and Vivian Bang on this bar. And Rob Long, our showrunner, worked on Cheers for years. So he really knew that bar kind of sitcom thing. And we had the most diverse cast on any television, whether it was network or cable. We were on TBS cable. Mm-hmm. Christine Ebersol, Brian Doyle Murray, what an incredible cast. And
Roy Wood Jr.?
Roy Wood, yes, who's now gone on to do incredible things. And we had like 4 comedians on there. And all ages, races. Ahmed's Egyptian, Roy's black, obviously, and nobody picked up on that. And I kept saying, why isn't the studio and the network putting out that we are the most diverse, blah, blah, blah. And then right on the heels of that, I think just as we were in our 3rd season, FOB comes out. And I think they did great work. But that was also here. We were fully American. I mean, I did have an accent instead of a Korean accent, but we were an Americanized family. And here was a family that was somewhat more sort of on the more immigrant side, trying to fit in down there. So I just think it's always the perception and what they think is going to sell.
Yeah.
But if they just open their mind a little bit, then it could have done other things. I do really believe that.
I was just thinking, like, you have played mother to comedians at least 3 times with Awkwafina in the mix now. Do you know what I mean? Is that anything? Is that anything for you?
I don't know. Can you make it anything? I don't know. Can you pay your bills on it? I guess so. I mean, I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, whoever knew that I would be a Korean mother? All I can say is that all Asian mothers are tough. My mother was tough on me. Everyone would say, "Oh, your mother's so nice." Oh, yeah, to you. To me, maybe not so much. And I think that's the thread. I mean, Margaret's mother was in Korea, I guess, while we were shooting, and then finally comes to a taping. And I know this in my head somewhere that, Margaret's mother's going to be in the audience tonight. And then I get out to do the first scene. I should ask Margaret if she remembers this moment. I remember it. And we can't get through the first scene. She keeps going up on our lines. And I'm like, well, I don't understand. It's like a very simple scene. And I look at her, and she's sweating. She's just sweating. And I'm like, what's happening? So I go over to her, and I go, what? Oh, before I look at her, I go, oh, Margaret's mother's here. And I look out in the audience, and there she is in the front row with a Tootsie Roll in her mouth, twirling it, completely, disapproving. And I look at this, and I go back to Margaret, and I said, Margaret, I just got to say, I know your mom's in the audience. You're the one with the television show, not her. Fuck her.
Fuck that Tootsie Pop.
And she Tootsie Roll. It was a Tootsie Roll. And
oh, that's harsh.
Margaret looked at me, and she went
soft.
She went like this. Yeah, okay. And we got through the scene. So years later, we're doing Sullivan Son, and Billy Gardell's in our episode, right? And they're playing hockey. Steve loves hockey, and the Penguins. I guess it's the Penguins. The hockey team.
It's the Pittsburgh team. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're there, and Steve's trying to do his thing, and there's Billy Gardell is coaching, and I said, "Give me a Tootsie Roll," to this prop person. And she goes, "What?" I said, "Just give me a Tootsie Roll." And a lollipop. And there I was in the front thing, twirling it in my mouth. I said to Steve, I told him what it was. Business. Yeah. No, it's called stealing from the best.
That's so good. That is so good. Okay. Jodi Long, we have entered the part of our show that we call Rapid Fire. This is rapid for Ann and I because we're going to be throwing everything else we need to know before we wrap this up at you. If you need to take the time, you can take the time to get the story out, whatever you have to say, but it's rapid for us.
Okay.
All right. Jodi Long, what was more challenging, running from sort of drone-like machines on the set of RoboCop 3 when your family is separated, or wearing what appears to be a heavy Patti LaBelle-inspired wig on an episode of The Wayans Brothers?
The latter, the Wayans brothers.
The wig was harder?
Harder, absolutely harder.
It's an incredible wig.
It's an incredible wig. I was so like, oh my God, this is going to fall off.
Okay. I mean, I was very into it, of course. I was very into it and your art dealer character.
I'm glad for reminding me. Anyway, next.
No, you were great. You were so good. Okay. Jodi, you won an Emmy in 2021 for playing Aunt Lillian in the Netflix series Dash and Lily. Who inspired what I'm calling a sort of mid-Atlantic accent that you created for that character? Was it Auntie Mame?
No, it was this actress named Irene Worth who was on Broadway. And she...
Of course.
Do you remember her? You don't remember.
Yes.
An amazing actress. But she always had this sort of English accent. And you thought she was sort of English. I'd be like, well, she must be English. And she was an American.
Yeah.
She had just worked over there for so long. She had sort of adopted this thing. And she was incredibly grand. And I just thought, oh, that's her, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't Auntie Mame, but it was her, yeah.
It's very good. It's very good.
You worked with your share of big-name Hollywood directors like Curtis Hanson with Bedroom Window, Ron Howard for Splash, Woody Allen with Alice and Celebrity, Paul Schrader with Patty Hearst, Mike Newell for Soursweet, Paul Mazursky in The Pickle, Oliver Stone, Born on the 4th of July. Which of those celebrity name directors was your cup of tea, and which one left a little of something to be desired?
Well, I've already told you that was Mike Newell was my cup of tea.
Yeah, we love Mike.
Oh, that's true. You did tell us
and,
that.
The one that left a little desired, well, I guess it was Woody.
He doesn't direct, is that right? That's what we've been...
Yeah, he does, although he did bring me back because my makeup was bad. But, he was it was like an enigma. I think he cast me once by kind of checking me out. You walk into the room and you're like, oh, and you're about to ready to sit down. And he was like, oh, thank you very much. It's like you walk in and you haven't even sat down. And it's like, and then he sort of looked at me and I was like, oh, hey, I don't know. I think that was the first time he cast me. Then after that it was, and you never read a script. You got your lines and that was it. It was hard. It's hard to work that way because it's not about any real anything.
It's like you're guessing at it.
Yeah, completely.
Okay. You appear in the dream sequence portion of The Exorcist 3 where George C. Scott is walking through this dream-like hospital ward. And next to you is Samuel L. Jackson, Patrick Ewing, and Fabio. How fucking insane was that day on set?
It was insane. And all flying down. Us all flying down together, right? And I had known Sam before that. I can't remember. I've known him for so long. I mean, we had fun, but he was a blind man in that. I don't know if he was a blind man. And all I remember was flying down with Patrick Ewing. And I guess we were shooting that in I don't know, South Carolina, somewhere down south. And we were in a little plane. And I guess we're in first class because we were flying down. But his legs, he was so tall, his legs were, he had the bulkhead and his legs were up the wall.
Wait, you're a New York girl. Were you a Knicks fan? Did you care? I mean...
No, I didn't care. I didn't care.
Honestly, when I was watching it, I was like, okay, is that Samuel L. Jackson? I was like, that looks exactly like Patrick Ewing. There's no way that's him. And then I see Fabio and I said, this is an incredible film.
What? Now my dog is barking. He's growling.
He agrees.
That was pretty interesting. I actually liked going down there and doing it. And Peter Blatty, the writer, he directed it.
Oh, okay. He had a vision.
Yes, or he didn't want anybody else fucking it up. I don't know.
Okay, Jodi, speaking of your dog, you were on an episode of Judge Judy to settle a case where you were bitten by a dog at the dog park. What kind of energy did Judy give you when the cameras weren't rolling, and how were the craft services?
I have no idea. She gave no energy. You did not speak to her. She was the judge. It was just like a courtroom. Sorry, the dog is going crazy.
That's okay.
Literally, she would be I mean, she just came out. She did it like a judge. I was nervous. I was like, oh my God, this woman's going to like ask me these questions. I have to tell you, I did get bitten by a Rottweiler, right, who was going after my dog, and his whole head was around my knee because my dog was on a leash and he was not. And he wanted me to let go of my dog so he could attack him. And I was pulling this way with the dog, and he came around and he bit me around my knee. And thank God my weight was on my back left leg. Because the doctor said if I hadn't had my weight on it, like anybody, somebody bites you, you pull away. He said he would have ripped through every tendon around my knee. He said, so you got really lucky. I only had 3 punctures around my knee, and I was down.
It's terrifying.
But so I was, I had to go to the hospital, blah, 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 blah. But Judge Judy was terrifying. She was terrified. I was terrified. I was like, I don't have to act here. I'm just terrified of her. And what was so weird, because I had filed a complaint I'd filed a lawsuit against him to pay for my medical insurance, and my medical and all the stuff, pain and suffering, because he did not have a rabies certificate for the dog.
Oh no!
Yeah, and he didn't share it with me, so I had to go through all that. So I filed the papers, and all my friends in New York were saying I was in LA, I was working, but I had my dog with me, and he's like, Jodi, you should go on Judge Judy. And I was like, yeah, forget it. It's so ridiculous. So then I get a call from this guy, and he goes, hi, I'm so-and-so, so-and-so. I'm from the Judge Judy show. And I thought this was my friend. And I was like, Kevin, you stop it. You're just being ridiculous. He goes, I'm sorry. And I was like, you're joking, right? And he's like, no, I'm really from the Judge Judy show.
That is so cool. So they just go to they go into like small claims court and like call people based. Wow, that's
correct.
Interesting.
Yeah,
interesting.
But the thing is that instead of the person who loses paying, they pay you what you've asked for if you win, and that person gets off scot-free.
So you won,
except for I did win. Yeah,
Judy paid.
Yeah, they paid. And, other than being embarrassed, I guess, on national television. I don't know.
Right.
I can't believe, I feel like this is my life. I'm on This Is My Life with you guys.
We're trying. Okay, Jodi, in Striking Distance, you play a cop who is killed off screen while staying on Bruce Willis's houseboat. He rolls your body over in the water to reveal your face as he screams, Kimberly, no, it stops now. And then he runs off to try to find the killer. How pruned was your skin by the end of that scene? And did Bruce Willis apologize for keeping you in that water for so long?
No, it wasn't pruned. He didn't keep me in the water that long. It wasn't even in the original script. And I had shot the film in Pittsburgh with him, and I get a call. I'm up in Oakland doing a TV movie about the Oakland fires. and they're like, you're doing another scene with Bruce. I'm like, really? What's happening? Well, they rewrote this thing, and you are going to be in a tank on the Sony Studios lot, in Esther Williams' tank. This is what they tell me. And I'm like,
ooh, yeah,
that's glamorous.
Oh my God, I'm going to be in a bathing suit. Oh my God, I have to go work out. So now every day I'm working out in the gym because I think I have to have a bikini on, right? I'm like, okay, I'm going to look great on camera. I get down there, finish the movie. I get down there. I'm at Sony lot. I'm like, where's my bathing suit? I'm going in for costume. They're like, you're not wearing a bathing suit. I said, what are you talking about? I'm in the water, right? I'm in a tank with Bruce. Jodi, you're in your police outfit. What do you mean? What do you mean? Oh, well, you didn't get, you're dead. You die now. You die. and you're going to be in the tank, and you're going to be flipped over. You're going to be dead.
Wow.
So Bruce wasn't there. It was just somebody's hand.
Yeah. I was not expecting that.
Yeah,
Bruce!
It was not. And my hair was longer than it is now. And literally every time they turned me over, my hair was across my face. and they were like, and the reason they did this, it was something about, I don't know, Bruce's character, that he had to have somebody die that was close to him, colleague, right? And so they had to see my face. Oh my God, we gotta have somebody have her. When they turn her over, you gotta hold on to her hair so it doesn't go across her face. so much for my bathing suit scene.
Wow.
Honestly, Bruce not showing up, I don't know how I know how I feel about it. I know how I feel about it. Okay, Jodi, your career spans decades, but you have 2 iconic lines, at least, that have a life of their own in pop culture. Of course, we're referring to your line in Sex and the City when Charlotte starts hanging out with a group of lesbians and you respond, "Sweetheart, that's all very nice, but if you're not going to eat pussy, you're not a dyke." And of course, your line in The Hot Chick as Ling Ling's mom when you show up to the prom with a necklace and say, "Ling Ling, you forgot your bling bling." Which line will haunt you until the day you die?
Haunt me? Oh, I don't know. Haunt me. I think that I just think it's so great when women sidle up to me and they think I'm actually that character.
You get that. You get lesbians that are like, "Oh yeah."
Yeah, I've had that happen.
Oh,
and
into it.
I'm like, "Oh yeah, okay, I'm an actress." And
It's very interesting. People don't seem to get it.
yeah, they don't. Listen, my family didn't get it either. My cousins in Australia called me and they were like, "Oh, we just saw you in that Sex and the City, and Susan wants to know, is that why you're not married?" That's what they said to me. I was like, "I'm sorry, it's acting." Anyway,
Oh my God.
but I love Bling Bling. You forgot your bling bling.
Iconic.
It's classic.
But I have to tell you, I did a lot of different versions of that line, the Sex and the City line. And the one that I actually really loved in post was they said, "Well, we have to make this sort of less raunchy or whatever for whatever market it was."
TBS.
Did they call you in to do ADR for that stuff when they were?
Yeah.
I didn't know that they got like you. I thought they would just get like, that's cool. Get it.
That is cool.
Yeah, I think the original line was, "Sweetheart, if you don't eat pussy, you're not a lesbian." And then they made it a dyke. And then there was one where it's like, I love this one. "If you don't dive at the Y, you're not a dyke." That's what it was. Don't dive at the Y.
They've got options. They've got. Wait, so is that what airs on PBS? The Y line?
No, TBS, not PBS.
PBS.
I don't know where it is. I've never seen it that way.
We're gonna try and find the edited
Yeah, I watched
version.
the HBO. Did rewatch it this morning, and I watched the HBO version. But wow, okay.
Which one is the HBO version? Is the original?
The HBO said,
yeah.
"If you don't eat pussy, then you're not a dyke." In the version that's currently on HBO Max.
I see. Okay, so then that must have been the original, because then I did one. You're not a lesbian. Maybe you don't.
Maybe
dive
that
at
one's
the
on
Y,
E.
You're not a lesbian. Maybe that's what it was.
Oh, that's good. Okay, Jodi, final question. It's very important, as you can imagine. We are journalists. The story goes that you dressed up as a man to audition for the Philip Glass, David Henry Wong theatrical piece, 1,000 Airplanes on the Roof. What did your male drag look like, and did it include a mustache?
No, I wore no mustache. My male drag I had like on a 1940s suit, right? Like that kind of bogey suit, and where the pants were like low on my hips. So I just remember doing it. And my hair was all up in a sort of fedora, very bogey-like, I kind of was like, and I was like, I have to have my center of gravity lower, like in my dick. Like everything's in my dick. So I did the audition that way. And Judy Dennis, who also brought me in for Soursweet. So it was after I had done Soursweet, and she brought me in for that. And it was written for a man. That's why I did it like that. And David's M. Butterfly was on Broadway. So here was a man playing a woman in M. Butterfly. And I thought, well, why can't I play a man?
That's so cool.
Right?
Love it.
And then I got the job, and they said, we want you to be a woman. I was like, why? Why?
I've got my dick.
I got my dick. I got this down.
Jodi Long, thank you so much for joining us on You Might Know Her From. This has been a total pleasure.
It's been fun. Thank you. And boy, you've really jogged my memory of all the things that I've forgotten in my career. And maybe rightfully so.
Something that's always so fun is when we're chatting with an actor and they receive what the energy that we're giving them. And yeah. I just particularly loved the moment where Jodi was talking about working with Woody Allen and was like, well, of course we didn't get a script. You'd just get your lines. And you were like, it's just kind of guessing. And she was like, completely. And it made me laugh so hard. I don't know why. It just made me laugh because I felt like she understood what we were giving her.
Yeah, also talking about like the reveal that she had really thought she was going to be in Esther Williams' tank and do this big like scene in the water with Bruce Willis, and so she got all dolled up and got ready to be in a bathing suit, and they were like, "Oh, you're definitely in your cop uniform and you're definitely dying in the water." And then Bruce Willis didn't even bother to show up. This is the showbiz that I am interested in discovering, and I feel like we covered so many bases with her, and I know I pushed this in the interview. I cannot recommend highly enough that you go and watch Long Story Short, the documentary based on her parents' lives. It was such a fascinating reveal to see all of the footage, to see her sort of write the narrative and allow her parents the space to sort of talk about their past and then what it meant to her. Really, I found the whole thing so moving. And Flower Drum Song is a very important show to me. I took one of my best friends, Sean, to see it as his first Broadway show. And I think that revival didn't get enough love. To date, it's like one of my favorite things that I've seen on Broadway. It was such a fun, big show. And I thought the revisions that David Henry Wong made were really good. Jodi Long is a star. And please, we're going to link out to that footage of her singing Grant Avenue, one of the greatest songs in the musical theater canon, on her Instagram page. So make sure you check the show notes. All right, dearest darlings of the world, you know what time it is. This is the part of the show where we connect this week's guest, Jodi Long, to next week's guest through a series of actor connections using only women or non-binary performers. Damien, can you set us up to give us a blind item for who next week's guest is going to be?
I sure can. And you'll be surprised to know, folks, that it's less than 10 people this week. Jodi Long was in The Hot Chick with Rachel McAdams. Rachel McAdams was in The Family Stone with Diane Keaton, who was in Crimes of the Heart with Jessica Lange, who was on American Horror Story Freak Show with Patti LaBelle, who was on Sesame Street with next week's guest.
Ooh. Oh, the delights that we get into next week, really. Stories to be unfolded. Let us know if you have a guess.
If you're not familiar with Patti LaBelle singing the ABCs on Sesame Street, it is an incredible clip. I believe we've talked about it here before. It is something that is important to so many of my friendships. She is just really singing. So I recommend watching that clip as homework for next week's episode, because I think it's going to be a real treat to get to talk about Patti on Sesame Street.
Hear, hear. Also, do you like that? Damien smiling at me as he watches my transition happen in real time. If you haven't done so yet, the thing that you can do that will help us the most is leave us a 5-star review on the Apple Podcast app. It's the thing that helps move us up in the algorithm, get in front of more eyeballs so that we can get in front of more ear holes. And that's what helps us build our audience, you who we love so much and appreciate hearing from you. You can leave some words of inspiration that the show has left you with, an actress's name, an emoji. As you know, we retired the AOK emoji because it seems like a white supremacist gesture. So we love the boiled shrimp emoji, or a prawn will do. So either one works. Leave us a little commentary and we would be so grateful. Thank you so much.
Folks, if you want to hear about what Theater Ann is seeing, if you want to stay plugged into me time traveling on an edible while I watch Mannequin 2, please follow us on social media. You can find me at Damien Bellino, and that's Damien with an A, on all of the things. And you can find my best friend at Rodaman on all of the things, and that is RODEMANNE.
You might know her from is produced by us. That's Damien Bellino and Ann Rodeman. And of course, we want to thank our consultants at Grumpy Entertainment who keep us on track. That's Jason Jude Hill and Daniel Sears. And every inch of editing that you hear on each and every episode of You Might Know Her From is courtesy of our great editor, Daniel Sears.
Also, special thanks to Gang. All of that music you hear underscoring each and every episode of You Might Know Her From is by Gang. You can download and stream Gang wherever you listen to your music.
Also, if you need to see Jodi Long's clip from Sex and the City, if you need to hear her accent on Dash and Lily, or if you want to watch Grant Avenue from her Instagram, you're going to find all of those links in our show notes. It's at the bottom of the episode description, and I spend a lot of time on it because it's very important for me that I archive every single thing that we discuss on this show. You know what? One thing we realized together over text last night? This is the following. You said something about Michelle Visage and the fact that RuPaul really doesn't know the name of her children, despite the fact that they're quote unquote best friends. Yeah. And I was like, absolutely. And you were like, it's like her and Debbie and Leah Remini. And I was like, I know. And Debbie Mazar just picked up and moved to Italy. And she was like, fuck it all. And you were like,
I never realized that the thing that Michelle Visage, Leah Remini, and Debbie Mazar, who are all best friends, the thing that they have in common is that they are all also best friends with someone else who's like very famous and like other level famous and like probably doesn't really have time for them all the time. Which is, of course,
absolutely.
Debbie's connected to Madonna, Leah's connected to J-Lo, and Michelle's connected to Rue.
It makes me love all three of them so much. I feel like they know who they are in the world. They like have no illusions about anything. I think Michelle just wants to be like New York and London famous, and then will be happy if she's like respected when she goes to England. And like Debbie is living a great life doing like a culinary show, and Leah Remini's like the coolest person on earth.
Yeah, they're all just, and they're also all like just Northeast, like I think specific like New Jersey, New York, like Italian or like Italian adjacent. I don't know what Michelle Visage is, but the other two are Italian. And I love
We're
it.
going to say Italian, Armenian, Greek, one of those maybe.
Exactly.
I love them all.